On South Korean social media, especially on forums like The Q, and even major outlets such as SBS News, there's been a heated discussion on a topic that might make many Vietnamese frown. Is Vietnam becoming the next scam hub like Cambodia? Some typical comments include people saying, it's just a change of location, from Cambodia to Vietnam, or Chinese syndicates are now setting up bases in Vietnam. Others even advise, it's best not to travel to Southeast Asia anymore. It's too scary. Hearing this, most Vietnamese can only laugh, though with a tinge of sadness, because clearly these remarks mostly come from people who have little to no understanding of what Vietnam is really like. Some Koreans might not even know that Vietnam has long been a unified, stable nation. If someone only reads a few headlines about cross-border crime arrests, it's easy to slap the label "scam hotspot" on Vietnam, as if criminals were sprouting like mushrooms here. But the reality is that Vietnam has never been and will never be a breeding ground for such crimes. Why? Because Vietnam has something many neighboring countries lack: strict law enforcement, tight security, and a vigilant public who actively report suspicious behavior. To understand why Koreans might harbor this fear, we have to look at what happened in Cambodia first. In Cambodia, massive scam compounds mushroomed in places like Sihanoukville, Poi Phet, and Ba Viet. These operations, mostly run by Chinese and other East or Southeast Asian criminal networks, created hell factories where victims were trafficked and forced to work in fraudulent call centers. These scams thrive due to lax government oversight and covert protection from powerful underground groups. As a result, tens of thousands of people fell victim, including many Koreans and Vietnamese. Now, let's break down the fears of those Koreans sitting behind their computer screens and see just how mistaken they are about Vietnam. Vietnam is completely different. There are no gray zones, no untouchable areas where criminals can operate freely. Think about it. Is there any neighborhood in Vietnam the authorities don't know about? From local neighborhood committees to ward police and the Ministry of Public Security, every residential area and every foreign tenant is documented and tightly monitored. If a stranger rents a house or a group of people moves in and comes and goes late at night, it only takes a few days before the local police show up to check their documents. That's why people often joke that in Vietnam, even if a foreign tourist gets overcharged by a taxi or a street vendor, those responsible are tracked down within hours, forced to refund the money and apologize. So, how could a secret online scam organization possibly survive here? In 2024 to 2025 alone, Vietnam cracked down on dozens of major cross-border scam rings. In October 2025, Vietnamese and Cambodian police jointly arrested 59 suspects posing as police and military officers who had scammed Vietnamese victims out of millions of US dollars, all uncovered in a short investigation period. Before that, in cities like Haiphong, Bac Ninh, and Quang Ninh, hundreds of Chinese nationals who had illegally entered Vietnam to set up online scam operations were discovered and deported, often within 24 hours. In Vietnam, cybercriminals don't get a honeymoon period. Once they show their face, surveillance cameras, residence databases, and security agencies quickly track them down. So when people claim that Vietnam is becoming another Cambodia, that's like saying Singapore is turning into Las Vegas. It sounds amusing, but makes absolutely no sense. Vietnam doesn't have the kind of loose regulatory environment that Cambodia does. There are no special economic zones where foreign groups can buy land and wall off compounds to build scam call centers. Here, if you want to rent a building or open a business, you need a stack of legal documents: temporary residence permits, business licenses, fire safety approvals, tax registration, insurance, and more. Missing even one can get you shut down immediately. Many foreigners, especially some South Korean netizens, believe that Chinese groups are building scam bases in Vietnam, but we can firmly prove this claim is completely false and practically impossible. Vietnam not only monitors Chinese nationals closely, but also keeps a tight grip on all foreign residents in general. In 2024 alone, Vietnam deported more than 1,200 Chinese nationals for violating residency regulations, most of whom were suspected of involvement in online fraud. In cities like Nha Trang, Da Nang, Phu Quoc, and Binh Duong, police regularly inspect and coordinate with landlords, hotels, and service departments. At the slightest sign of suspicion, investigations are launched immediately. Therefore, those comments claiming that the Chinese are setting up scam bases in Vietnam are nothing more than distortions and jokes. It's not only because of Vietnam's strict laws, but also because Vietnamese people are naturally watchful, in a positive way. If a house keeps its lights on all night, the windows covered, and unfamiliar people coming and going, it only takes a few days before the local police show up to check their documents. That's why people often joke that in Vietnam, even if a foreign tourist gets overcharged by a taxi or a street vendor, those responsible are tracked down within hours, forced to refund the money and apologize. So, how could a secret online scam organization possibly survive here? In the story of Southeast Asian scams, Vietnam is a victim, not a perpetrator. Thousands of Vietnamese people have been deceived into going to Cambodia or Myanmar for marketing jobs, only to be imprisoned, beaten, and sold. Many believed the false promises of easy work and high pay, only to realize too late that they were trapped in scam compounds. That's why when Vietnam cracks down on such crimes, it's not just a matter of law enforcement, it's about defending national honor and protecting its citizens. The way Vietnam responds is entirely different from Cambodia. In Cambodia, the government only began dismantling scam zones after international media and human rights organizations exerted pressure. But in Vietnam, the response is immediate, at the first sign of any illegal activity. If an illegal online gambling ring pops up somewhere, the police will find it, dismantle the entire network, and seize everything: computers, laptops, phones. Scam call centers operating through Telegram, Zalo, or Facebook are also wiped out almost instantly. Vietnam has a cybersecurity law in place for years, along with decrees requiring foreign tech platforms to store user data in Vietnam and cooperate with investigations. That's the protective shield Cambodia never had. Some Koreans say, Thailand, the Philippines, Cambodia, Vietnam, it's all the same Southeast Asia. But the truth is very different. In Vietnam, hundreds of thousands of South Koreans live and work safely every single day, and perhaps those who worry should listen to this very community. The Korean community in Vietnam numbers about 180,000 people, concentrated in Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh City, Bac Ninh, and Binh Duong, where major corporations like Samsung, LG, POSCO, and Hyundai operate. If Vietnam was as dangerous as some claim, would these giant corporations dare to invest tens of billions of US dollars and send thousands of employees here? The answer is obvious, isn't it? South Korea is now one of Vietnam's largest foreign investors. In 2024, Korean FDI inflows exceeded $9 billion US dollars. More than 3.6 million South Korean tourists visited Vietnam, accounting for nearly a quarter of all international arrivals. Surely those 3.6 million visitors weren't reckless, nor were the Korean corporations foolish enough to pour money into an unsafe place. All of that stems from trust, because the Korean people know that Vietnam is safe, friendly, and reliable. Cross-border and transnational crimes may move from place to place, but Vietnam is not the kind of soil they can take root in. Yes, scammers from Cambodia, Myanmar, and Laos always look for new locations when crackdowns intensify, but surviving in Vietnam? Impossible. Here they would immediately encounter layers of control: immigration checks, cybersecurity surveillance, community reporting, and constant observation from residents. Every house and neighborhood in Vietnam is covered with surveillance, from public security cameras to watchful citizens themselves. As people like to joke, even if the electric cameras fail, the human cameras never stop working. So, if Cambodia is where scammers dig their nests, Vietnam is where they dig their graves, because there's simply no place in Vietnam for anyone to sit behind a closed door, plug in a computer, and scam the world without their neighbors noticing. Are South Koreans worried? Understandably so. Many have seen their fellow citizens tricked into traveling to Cambodia, lured by easy jobs and high salaries, only to end up victims. But projecting that fear onto Vietnam is unfair, because Vietnam is one of South Korea's strongest partners in fighting such crimes. Vietnamese police and Korean authorities have established a joint channel for sharing cybercrime data, working together to investigate dozens of scams involving impersonation of Korean banks inside Vietnam. In other words, Vietnam isn't a scam hub, it's the firefighter putting out the flames. Looking at Southeast Asia as a whole, Vietnam ranks among the safest countries in the world, according to the Global Peace Index. Vietnam is 41st globally, higher than Thailand, Malaysia, or Indonesia. The violent crime rate in Vietnam is about 35% lower than the global average. Kidnappings, terrorism, and organized crime are almost non-existent. Moreover, Vietnam's residency, immigration, and border control systems are among the most advanced in the region, thanks to a fully integrated national database that quickly detects abnormal activity. And Vietnam is going even further, actively combating online fraud and cybercrime. Both the United Nations and Interpol recognize Vietnam as one of the most proactive partners in Southeast Asia in fighting transnational crime. In 2023, Vietnam was chosen as the coordination center for anti-crime projects in the Mekong region, a clear testament that Vietnam isn't a scam hub, but a pillar against it. So when someone ignorantly claims that Vietnam is becoming the next scam center after Cambodia, you can confidently smile and reply, "Our Vietnam is a nation of discipline, community, and security, a place where criminals simply have no chance to take root." Cambodia may be a hotspot, but Vietnam is the new shield of Southeast Asia. And that's a truth not everyone sitting behind a screen in Korea will easily understand. Hopefully, though, such misconceptions come only from a small minority, because those who truly know Vietnam know how wrong that picture is. Thank you for watching this story. If you found it meaningful, please subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this video. And now it's time to say goodbye. Thank you for staying with Societal Stories.